all the Shakespeare out of him, blah, 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 blah. And I stopped sweating, and I told him to go himself, very honestly. And I was banned from the studio, and my agency was banned from the studio. And so I was first call. That was it. Yeah. So I went to Warner Brothers, where Hoyt Bowers was the head of casting. That was the second studio that called. And Hoyt Bowers said, we've got a film called Rebel Without a Cause that's going. If Nick Ray says he'll put you in Rebel Without a Cause, one of the gang members, we'll put you under contract. So I went and saw Nick, and Nick said fine, and I started my contract at Warner Brothers.
It was there that you first encountered the method embodied in a person who was in making his second film, I believe. Who were the influences on you before this picture, for example?
Will Olivier, Alec Guinness, Orson Welles, Barrymore. I mean, I was very much in the classical tradition, but when I was 14 years old, in 1 week, my whole thinking about acting had changed. I saw 2 movies in 1 week. One was, the first movie that I'd ever seen Brando in was, strangely enough, Viva Zapata. And I saw Montgomery Clifton Place in the Sun. And in 1 week, my whole mind was just really confused by this very grand, kind of school and very studied school that I had become quite a master at that young age. To people I saw really actually thinking, feeling, doing things, and not going for big emotions, but something else was happening. There was something real happening that I didn't really know what it was, but I knew it was fantastic and marvelous, and that I had to find that thing. I really felt at that time I was the best young actor in the world. And when I saw Dean, I realized I wasn't even in the car, you know, that the man was doing things that I couldn't conceive of. I mean, he wasn't doing things that were on the written page. I mean, I could give a great line reading, I could do great gestures, I could preconceive everything, but he wasn't preconceiving anything. He was improvising. He was doing things that weren't on the page. He was using his imagination. He was expressing things with his body and through himself that were just way beyond my understanding. So one night on Rebel Without a Cause, I actually grabbed him and threw him in the car and told him that I wanted to know what he was doing. And
was that the night when they shot the chicken race?
Run, yeah.
What did he tell you?
He said, you got to start doing things and not showing them. And I said, what do you mean do things and not show them? He said, well, if you're smoking a cigarette, smoke the cigarette. Don't act smoking the cigarette. You know, if you're drinking, just drink the drink. Don't act drinking. Look, you know, here, but don't act these things. And then, and don't have any preconceived ideas of what the next moment. Start living in the moment, in a moment-to-moment reality. And let things happen. Don't presuppose anything. Somebody knocks on the door, you answer the door. You don't think they have a gun in their hand. Then you see they have a gun in their hand. Then you react to the gun. I mean, it's the old stuff, you know. So. But that's what he told me, and that's where I started from.
In the world, a diamond. Show her you'll love her for the next 1,000 years. A diamond is forever. De Beers.
This is your new business. This is your new car. The new Volvo V40. Now get back to work. Every bit of Volvo for about $24,000.
Like the Amanita villosa, the Amanita virosa is a white mushroom that grows in Nova Scotia. However, unlike the villosa, it's poisonous if ingested. The same mistake can happen investing internationally. if you base decisions strictly on geographic region or industry. That's why American Century's international team makes its investments company by company based on earnings growth, which earned these funds impressive ratings. We think it's just a smarter and healthier way to invest. Call 1-888-ACI-FUNDS.
2 out of 3 of our children are problem readers, but these kids beat the odds. They took the Hooked on Phonics Reading Challenge and they won.
Hooked on Phonics taught me to read.
Take the Hooked on Phonics Reading Challenge. We promise your child will be a better reader in just 4 weeks, or your money back.
To order Hooked on Phonics, call 1-800-ABCDEFG. Must be 18 or older. With your paid order, get the Start Right CD-ROM, a $40 value free. Call 1-800-ABCDEFG.
Wants no more than just a pretty face.
You have no real self. You're just this mirror that you show of love.
Lauren Hutton has reinvented herself as an actor, an interviewer, and a world traveler.
I think if I hadn't done that, I would have been lost.
Becoming more superwoman than supermodel. Bravo profiles Lauren Hutton. Tonight, 10 Eastern, 7 Pacific. Willem Dafoe and Harvey Keitel star in Martin Scorsese's daring film, The Last Temptation of Christ. Tomorrow on Bravo. Now back to Dennis Hopper inside the Actors Studio on Bravo.
You worked with him a second time with Jimmy Dean, a second time in Giant, of course. And presumably...
It was just like a student teacher.
He watched you shoot, if I recall, after you had, on the day that you shot, the scene between you and Rock Hudson when you accused your father of being prejudiced because he couldn't really accept the fact that you'd married a young Mexican-American woman.
I'm a fair man, and I've been fair all my life with everybody. And you, my own son, can't sit there and tell me that I'm not a fair man. Look, Jordy, there's ways of living and there's ways of doing things that folks abide by when they want to live right and happily and comfort with their own people. And I always say Juana's a mighty fine little gal, but...
Don't sit there and prove what I say, please. I don't like to hear you do it. Now stop it.
Dang it, boy, you're not being fair. When that ruckus started down there tonight, who went after Rink? Your old man. And who took him to count? Your old man.
And why?
Why? Because
Because of my wife?
Yes.
No. No, because your son, Jordan Benedict, descended the long, proud line of Rieta, got knocked right flat on his back in front of old Texas. That's why.
Dean, if I recall, did he take you out afterwards and talk to you about it?
He said, I watched it, and he said, you know, all the things that worked, and that you had a real emotion, and he said, I wish Edmund Keene could have been there, and Barrymore could have been there today, boy, and like da-da-da-da-da, and blah, blah, blah. And he reels off these names, and I got so moved, I dropped a tear down, came running down my feet and face, you know.
You've spoken of Dean's description to you of an imaginary line. And it's one of the most profound thoughts I've ever...
You are really, wow, man. I'm going to just be quiet for a while. I'm going to lay back here a minute, you know. I think I got one here. Wait a second. Boy.
Didn't he say to you, and then I promised to leave him behind? He's hard to leave behind.
He is hard.
For everybody. That he could look out and see, as I see you people now in the audience, he could see beyond the cameras, and everybody was behaving in a very natural way. Your legs are crossed, you're holding your hands together, you've got your face on your chin, and he wanted somehow to be able to bring exactly that, no more, no less, to this side of the camera where he was behaving as truthfully, right?
Yeah, I would see Brando do that too. I watched Brando in Sayonara, and Brando would have a, he would talk to the young girl, and I don't think the young girl had ever acted before, but there was like, you know, let's say this is a line, but the camera is this way, and the scene and the line, their marks are over here where they're going to play this scene. But Brando would, I don't know, he had a terrible relationship with Josh Logan. He wouldn't listen to him and so on. But I saw Brando would be over talking to the girl and whispering in her ear and playing with her hair. on this side of camera. And then, as things progressed, he would eventually get her to the other side of camera on the marks, and he would be doing the same thing that he was doing off camera over there. And God knows what he was saying to her there, but now he's saying the lines. And she's responding, who was not an actress, in the same way, obviously, that she was over there, because he's got her and the attention and everything is working.
From heaven to hell. You appeared in a picture called From Hell to Texas. And here's Henry Hathaway directing you in an entirely different way, and you were young and juicy and rebellious. What happened on that set?
He gave me line readings, told me when to pick up the cup, when to put down the cup, when to get on the horse, off the horse, where to hold the reins, when to put the reins down, when to take drag off the cigarette, how to say my name, and where to sit on the set. Yeah. I walked off the picture 3 times, and then he'd come and we'd have dinner again, you know? And yeah. So anyway, finally, the last day of the film, I walk in, and it's 20th Century Fox, and I walk in, and there are stacks of film there. I mean, like, he says, you see this? And I said, yeah. He said, you know what those are? And I said, yeah, those are stacks of film. And he said, yeah, there's enough film there to shoot for 4 months. Now, you're going to do this scene the way I tell you. You're going to do every line reading the way I tell you. You're going to pick up the glass and put it down when I tell you to. You're going to do everything just the way I tell you. It went on till like 11 o'clock at night, and I finally just cracked and said, what do you want me to do? And he gave me the line reads, gave me the things. I did it and walked out of the studio. Well, everybody in Los Angeles who had a telephone or, you know, knew what was going on. I mean, it was like the story got around real quick. So I wasn't hireable. I couldn't be hired anymore in film. So that's how I arrived in New York to study with Lee. Yeah.
If memory serves, you were blackballed for 8 years.
Yeah, I didn't work in films for 8 years until Hathaway rehired me.
During that time, you began to grow long hair. You hung out in Venice with the Beats, Allen Ginsberg. Did you ever encounter a man there named Lawrence Lipton? He founded Venice, and he created. Was my father.
Wow.
Daddy was a beatnik.
Wow.
He created Venice. There was nothing there. He was a guru. He had thousands of followers. And he was the philosophical voice. He was a poet of the Beat generation. He wrote a book called The Holy Barbarians, which is definitive on that subject. He created Venice. So you probably met my dad.
Yeah, I absolutely knew
Daddy.
your father. I knew your father. And Vernon Getty.
Yeah.
And Kenneth Rexroth.
Absolutely.
And like, you know, and Wallace Berman and George Herms and the whole, yeah.
That's Dad's bunch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You left my father and his colleagues, and you came to New York, and now we're into it. You studied with Lee Strasberg. Would you describe for us, please, your experience? How were you admitted to the studio? How did you manage to get through those carefully closed doors?
Wow. I was here for almost 6 months before he would even see me. Now, at this time, I could have these figures wrong, but it's my fantasy world, so please don't give me the right figures. I think that at that time, there was something like somewhere between 14 and 15,000 people auditioning for the Actors Studio, and 3 were being let in every year. So it was like an incredible amount of people.
Marty Landau told me that the year that he made it, there were out of 2,000 or 3,000 auditions, applications, 2 were chosen, he and Steve McQueen.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, so it was like incredible. And Strasberg only taught 30 people in class, no more. After 6 months, I finally saw him, and I finally got into his private class. And I studied with Lee on and off for the next 5 years.
What was he like as a teacher for you?
It was by far the most important time of my life, you know, the times I was in his class.
Did you work with sense memory?
Well, yeah, I'm sure you all know what sense memories are. Sense memories are just really hearing something that isn't there, seeing something that isn't there, smelling something, doing something that you know, that you've experienced. Stanislavski talked about standing in the corner and standing in the corner for 5 minutes and not thinking about a white bear. The second that you're in the corner, you think, I'm here not to think of a white bear, so you can't really win at that game. But that's like the going from your conscious mind into your subconscious. You can't really do that. You can't say, my mother hit me one day. You tell a friend how your mother slapped you one time, but that doesn't mean you don't have the emotion that happened when your mother slapped you. So the only way you can do that is to stop thinking about what it was, get in this relaxed state, and then go through your senses. What was I wearing? But not what was I wearing. Can I feel what I was wearing that day? Can I hear anything that was happening that day? Not what was happening, because that's the conscious thing that's going to shut you off. But by going through your senses, your smells, your seeing, your hearing, your touch, something is going to hit, and it's going to bring back the emotion. And that's, you know, through your senses, through doing each one of your senses. One of those senses will bring an emotion forward, and that's your emotional memory. So we did sense memories. We did the song and dance, which is like the rag doll, where you stand and you sing My Funny Valentine, but you sing it only, break it up, My Funny Val, you know, and so then you relax, and Strasberg would say, you're real and we're real, you're real and we're real. That's the imaginary line here. You're real and we're real. And louder, 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 feel it through. But you like, you know, then you're standing, so your tension, you can feel your tension again. And these things start going through you. So that's the song exercise. And then to do the dance, you start doing the same thing, but it's like a rag doll dance that doesn't have any kind of form. So it's just really to see if your body's working with your voice. If your voice, but Strasberg would have told me there was no necessity to hit that chair. I should have known where that chair was. Yeah?
Have you found, for example, that effective memory or even sense memory is useful to you in film, where you have to bring yourself quickly to a moment?
It's the best, especially in film, because it can be very small. I mean, or very big. I mean, depending, but yeah. You know, I mean, in plays, you have to prepare way off, you know, be at the beginning of the act for that, when they bring the telegram in that your father's dead, you know. So you have to do your emotional memory and carry it through and let it go at that moment. But in a film, you can do it a few seconds ahead, or just before the camera rolls, or whatever. Right. So you can do it in pieces, and it's be more effective.
Studio on Bravo.
While you were in New York, you worked a great deal on television, did you not? Mm-hmm. About something over 100 television shows, if I recall.
Yeah, I did a lot of television. It's the only thing I could work on.
I mean, because you were still banned.
Yeah.
But you also exposed yourself in New York to something else. Didn't you become a kind of specter at the Museum of Modern Art?
Yeah, I went there every day. After class, I went to the Museum of Modern Art every day and went through the permanent collection. And I'd start with Cezanne, the Bathers, and go all the way through the permanent collection every day and do my sense memories. So, yeah, boy.
You had training as an artist, though, did you, in Kansas City?
Yes, Thomas Hart Benton had taught his class at the Nelson Art Gallery on Saturday afternoons for underprivileged kids, and I went to that. And one time he came up to me and I was doing a watercolor. I'd had some watercolor lessons with this guy who was a Rocky Mountain painter in Dodge City. And I was doing this like really rock with the water coming by and trees and everything. And Mr. Benton came up to me and he said, "Son, you're not going to understand what I'm talking about now, but someday you're going to have to get tight and paint loose." Yeah, so I did.
Henry Hathaway brought you back, you came back to Los Angeles, and lo and behold, you were in a Hathaway picture after all those troubles with John Wayne, right? Mm-hmm. And presumably he had forgiven your excesses, or maybe he even enjoyed them a little bit.
Well, his reason for hiring me was because he and John Wayne, he and Duke, that I'd married a nice Irish woman, Brooke Hayward, they knew the mother, Margaret Sullivan, who was a nice Irish woman, and I had married her daughter, and we had now a daughter of our own, and it was about time for me to go back to work. This was Hathaway's way of putting it to me in the office. And he said, but you know, Wayne doesn't dig any of that method. So if you're going to use any of that method, get out of here, kid. And I said, Mr. Hathaway, how could you think? No, I said, Mr. Hathaway, I'm a much better actor now than I was, then, and I just want to work for you and so on and so forth. He said, it's not me. I want you to understand, kid. I like that method. It's Wayne. Okay? So anyway, I arrive on the set in Durango, Mexico, and it's my first day on the picture, and Hathaway gives me every line reading and every gesture, and he says, okay, now, okay? So, rolls the camera, and I do every line reading and every gesture the way he told me. At the end of it, he says, cut. He comes up to me, he's crying, he's got a cigar in his mouth. He said, that's great, kid, that's great. You're just so wonderful, so wonderful. And I said, you see, Henry, I told you, I'm a much better actor now than I was 8 years ago. And he said, you're not a better actor, kid. You're just smarter. You're just smarter. So anyway, that's my...
So that brought you back into the, if not into the mainstream, at least you had a foot in the water.
I was certainly in John Wayne's world.
Yeah. And you made, subsequent to that, you made a bunch of biker pictures. One of them was written by a screenwriter whom you have called the best screenwriter you ever encountered, and his name was?
Jack Nicholson. Yeah.
Was he really that good?
He was a great screenwriter. And he wrote a screenplay called The Trip, which Roger Corman directed, and it was my first chance to go out and direct second unit. Peter Fonda was the star of it, and Bruce Dern, and Susan Strasberg, and myself, all in this drug movie.
Then, subsequent to that, at 3 o'clock in the morning, I think, Peter Fonda called you one night.
We promised each other that we'd never do a motorcycle picture. So when he called me at 3 in the morning, he wakes me up and he says he's with Arkoff and Nicholson, and he pitched them this story, which he just sort of made up as he was sitting with them, about these two bikers who, they smuggle all this marijuana in from Mexico, and they like get big gleamy new bikes, and they go across country to Mardi Gras in New Orleans, and they have a great time, and they're killed by a couple of duck hunters in Florida. And he said, and they said they'd give us the money. And they don't mind if I produce it. You can direct and act in it too. And I said, oh. I said, well, you sure you have the money, Peter? He says, how does it sound to you? And I said, do you have the money? And he said, yeah, they said they had the money. And I said, it sounds great to me. What a great idea for a movie. So that's where we started.
The movie was called Easy Rider. How many of you have seen Easy Rider? Easy Rider, apart from the fact that it's a remarkable motion picture, is a very important piece of American history. Did you shoot it more or less in sequence? Didn't you just sort of travel across the country and take what you got?
Yeah, we went in sequence. We started in Los Angeles and we ended up in New Orleans. So when Peter talked about the marijuana being smuggled at the beginning, it was too big a load. I couldn't figure out how two guys on dirt bikes are going to haul any kind of marijuana that's worth selling and get a lot of money and retire in Florida. Even I couldn't figure that out. And heroin to me at that time was out of the question. I felt it was not a drug that I wanted to promote. And I thought, why don't we do cocaine? Nobody has cocaine, you know. It's called the drug of kings. It's got to be really expensive. You know, we bring the cocaine in, and we can do it in small, like, battery packs, and, you know, so we all thought that was a great idea. So we used talcum powder. I mean, we were all like smoking grass, you know.
There was also, of course, the extraordinary scene, both of you, all of you, but especially you and Jack, when he smokes his first joint and lectures the world on freedom. Do you remember that scene? The two of you were cooking. That was major stuff.
That's like, you know, let's talk about that for a moment. The learning to use the accident and like making the accident work for you.
Right.
which is a very important part of this craft. I think Jean Cocteau said 98% of all creation is accident, 1% is intellect, and 1% is logic. And creation is learning how to make the accident work for you. In the campfire scene, which everybody thinks was improvised, where Jack turns on for the first time, was actually written. And I'd written it, and I'd gotten his speech basically out of Amdemsky. Amdemsky's first Met People with the Flying Saucers, written in 1946, when talking about, you know, they're here, they're working among us, and blah, blah. That was pretty much out of Amdemsky. And Jack, in the middle of it, started laughing. If you see the movie, he starts this thing about, and they're here, and they're invited, and they're working among us, so blah, 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 and then he breaks up and he starts laughing. And then it cuts to Peter, and Peter takes and gives him another thing, and he says, no, thanks, you know, I've got enough problems with the booze and everything, whatever. But he starts this story again, and he goes through the same story that he's just told, except this time he doesn't laugh. So what I did was, I mean, obviously it wasn't written that way. When I was editing it, I took the scene where he broke up, and I put it in and cut to Peter, da-da-da, and then back to Jack starting his speech again. But anyway, that's using a little bit of the accident.
If you want to see a great sense memory, an exercise in sense memory, watch Nicholson smoke that joint. What was in it? Was it a
Nice try. This R-E-E-L and R-E-A-L. Very confusing.
Obviously, A, it wasn't sense memory. And B, don't any of our students try it.
Right, there you go.
The Notions have contacted people at all walks of life. All walks of life. Yes. It would be a devastating blow to our antiquated systems. So now Venusians are meeting with people in all walks of life in an advisory capacity. For once, man will have a godlike control over his own destiny. He will have a chance to transcend and to evolve with some equality for all.
How's your joint, George?
You used the locals all along, didn't you? You used locals.
As I would arrive in a little place, my production manager would have the local little theater group come. And when I arrived in this little town, Margozin, Louisiana, wherever we were, that we shot this cafe scene, there was a little theater there, and all these people were there, and I could just look at them, and they were all actors. They were all like, oh, yeah. And then I saw the sheriff and these guys who were ready to lynch us. Right. And when I said to the casting person, I don't want those guys over there, I want those guys over there, she said, no, you don't. No, I can't, you know, I can't ask them. Those are the real guys. And I said, I know. I really want them in the movie. So I got this real sheriff and the real rednecks, the real guys who were like, you know, okay.
Well, that was their own dialogue. You didn't script it. They really hated you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they...
You have to remember...
They didn't look kindly on long hairs at that time. We went into one place and these guys pulled guns on us. I mean, we had some really bad times. It was tough out there. It was a real world.
How much did that film cost to make?
It cost $360,000, and I went 20 or 30,000 over budget. So, yeah, 360,000.
You brought it in on schedule, though, didn't you?
Yeah, always brought them in on schedule.
And how much did that picture gross?
It grossed about $50 million.
It won the 1969 Cannes Film Festival Award, Best Film by a New Director. And it was nominated for the Oscar for the best screenplay, which had been written by you and Peter and Terry Southern.
my whole mind was just really confused by this very grand, like, kind of school and very studied school that I had become quite a master at that young age, to people I saw really actually thinking, feeling, doing things, and not going for big emotions, but something else was happening. There was something real happening that I didn't really know what it was, but I knew it was fantastic and marvelous, and that I had to find that thing. I really felt at that time I was the best young actor in the world. And when I saw Dean, I realized I wasn't even in the car, you know, that the man was...
what did he tell you?
He said, you got to start doing things and not showing them. And I said, what do you mean do things and not show them? He said, well, if you're smoking a cigarette, smoke the cigarette. Don't act smoking the cigarette. You know, if you're drinking, just drink the drink. Don't act drinking. Look, you know, hear, but don't act these things. And then, and don't have any preconceived ideas of what the next moment. Start living in the moment, in a moment-to-moment reality. And let things happen. Don't presuppose anything. Somebody knocks on the door, you answer the door. You don't think they have a gun in their hand. Then you see the roll of Shakespeare out of him, blah, 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 blah. And I stopped sweating, and I told him to go himself, very honestly. And I was banned from the studio, and my agency was banned from the studio. And so I was first call. That was it, yeah. So I went to Warner Brothers, where Hoyt Bowers was the head of casting. That was the second studio that called. And Hoyt Bowers said, we've got a film called Rebel Without a Cause that's going. If Nick Ray says he'll put you in Rebel Without a Cause, one of the gang members, we'll put you under contract. So I went and saw Nick, and Nick said fine, and I started my contract at Warner Brothers.
It was there that you first encountered the method, embodied in a person who was in making his second film, I believe. Who were the influences on you before this picture, for example?
Will Olivier, Alec Guinness, Orson Welles, Barrymore. I mean, I was very much in the classical tradition. But when I was 14 years old, in 1 week, my whole thinking about acting had changed. I saw 2 movies in 1 week. One was, the first movie that I'd ever seen Brando in was, strangely enough, Viva Zapata. And I saw Montgomery Clifton Place in the Sun. And in 1 week, doing things that I couldn't conceive of. I mean, he wasn't doing things that were on the written page. I mean, I could give a great line reading, I could do great gestures, I could preconceive everything, but he wasn't preconceiving anything. He was improvising. He was doing things that weren't on the page. He was using his imagination. He was expressing things with his body and through himself that were just way beyond my understanding. So one night on Rebel Without a Cause, I actually grabbed him and threw him in the car and told him that I wanted to know what he was doing. And
was that the night when they shot the chicken?
The chicken run, yeah.
And